Who did this to you? The Mafia boss asked. By dawn, every man in the city feared for his life. The woman standing in the penthouse doorway wore diamonds that could pay my rent for 5 years. Her silver hair was pulled into a perfect chignon. Her smile was ice. You must be the artist, she said, her accent pure Moscow aristocracy. The one my son has been hiding up here. I set down my paintbrush carefully, though my hand shook. Behind her, Alexei appeared from his office, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw genuine emotion crack through his controlled exterior. Mother, he said, voice tight. We agreed you'd call first. I was in the neighborhood. Katerina Volkova settled onto the sofa like she owned it, which, I realized with sinking dread, she probably did. I wanted to meet the girl who painted Dmitry Kaslov's final portrait. My blood turned to ice. How do you know about that? She pulled out her phone, showed me an email. The encrypted one. The one that had offered me $8,700 3 weeks ago. Because I commissioned it. I needed to know if Dmitry was planning to betray our organization. Needed someone with no connections to paint him, observe him, report anything unusual. You used me. The words came out hollow. I paid you extremely well. Her expression hardened. And you provided exactly what I needed. Confirmation that Dmitry was nervous, distracted, using Alexei's territory for unauthorized meetings. She stood, circled me slowly. My son has gotten soft. Started caring about artists and buildings and legitimacy. But I still remember what this family is built on. Power maintained through decisive action. Alexei moved between us, his body a wall. You ordered the vandalism. I ordered a message. Katerina's smile was cruel. One that would demonstrate the cost of involvement with our enemies. The Odessa group needed to know we were watching Dmitry. Destroying the girl's painting accomplished that while simultaneously reminding you, my darling son, that sentiment is weakness our rivals will exploit. I thought of the photograph Alexei had shown me. Violent red letters bleeding across my father's face. Volkov's horror paints dead men. 6 months of work. The only thing I'd created purely for love, not money. Destroyed to make a point. You're insane, I said, voice shaking with rage. You destroyed my father's portrait to prove a point about power? I destroyed property. Nothing more. Dismissive. Though I admit I underestimated Alexei's reaction. I didn't realize he'd developed actual feelings for you. That's unfortunate. Get out. Alexei's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. Now. This is my organization. It was your organization. Father left it to me. You're an advisor. Nothing more. He pulled out his phone, pressed a single number. Constantine will escort you downstairs. If you ever target her again for any reason, you're done. Completely. I'll freeze every account, revoke every access, and you'll live out your remaining years on whatever money you've hidden from me. Katerina's eyes narrowed. You destroy your own mother over a starving artist? Alexei stepped closer to her, and I saw why people feared him. His pale gray eyes were cold as winter sky, his jaw set, every line of his body radiating controlled violence. I destroy anyone who hurts what's mine, he said softly. You taught me that. A massive man in a black suit appeared from the elevator. Alexei gestured once. Constantine, please ensure my mother reaches her car safely. I watched Katerina leave, her diamond necklace catching light, her perfect composure never slipping. The elevator doors closed with a quiet chime that sounded like a vault ceiling. Alexei turned to me, and something in his expression cracked. I'm sorry. I didn't know she was involved. But I was staring at him, processing what had just happened. He'd chosen me. Over his own mother. Over family loyalty. Over the organization he'd inherited. For a girl who painted portraits in Red Hook and could barely afford rent. If you love dark romance where dangerous men burn the world for the women they claim, hit subscribe. Because what you just witnessed, that's not where this story starts. To understand how I got here, how a struggling artist became the weakness of Brooklyn's most dangerous man, I need to take you back 48 hours. To the moment I painted the wrong face. To the night someone decided I needed to learn what it costs to exist in Alexei Volkov's world. To the moment he asked me a question that changed everything. Who did this to you? 48 hours earlier. I've painted 127 faces in 3 years. That's the cold mathematics of surviving as a portrait artist in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Each canvas represents $340 in materials, 16 hours of focused work, and the fragile hope that my landlord will accept rent 5 days late without filing eviction papers. The gallery sits on Van Brunt Street, wedged between a Polish bakery that smells like cardboard and cinnamon and a bar called Anchor's End where men drink whiskey at 10 a.m. without judgment. The building's bones are old, exposed brick that crumbles red dust onto my paintings, water-stained tin ceiling tiles, windows that rattle when trucks pass. But the light is perfect. Northern exposure, diffused and constant, the kind of illumination that makes skin tones honest on canvas. My landlord is a man named Alexei Volkov. I know this because his name appears on the lease I signed 36 months ago, written in precise Cyrillic-influenced script. I know this because the gallery sits in territory everyone whispers about but no one explains directly. I know this because I'm not naive enough to believe a struggling artist gets below-market rent in gentrifying Brooklyn without someone powerful allowing it. I've seen him exactly 4 times. Always at a distance. Stepping out of a black Mercedes, flanked by men in wool coats that don't quite conceal shoulder holsters. Dark hair going silver at the temples. A jaw that looks carved from something harder than bone. Eyes the pale gray of winter sky. Cold and assessing. He's never looked at me directly. I've been wallpaper. Background texture. Just another tenant paying just enough to keep the lights on in a building he probably owns through shell corporations I'll never trace. Until tonight. The commission came through my website 3 weeks ago. A message from an encrypted email address. Portrait needed. Subject will sit for 6 sessions. $8,700 upon completion. Discretion required. $8,700. That number rewrote my immediate future. Overdue rent. The $4,200 I still owed to NYU for my final semester before I dropped out to care for my father. Groceries that didn't come from dollar stores. New brushes to replace the ones I'd been nursing for 18 months. I should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why someone would pay nearly 10 times my normal rate. Should have recognized the setup. The subject arrived for his first session on a Tuesday in November. Male, early 50s, soft around the middle in a way that suggested desk work and expensive dinners. He wore a wedding ring that caught the gallery light, platinum, embedded with small diamonds. His cologne was overwhelming, designed to announce wealth before words could. "You come highly recommended," he said, settling into the chair I'd positioned by the north window. His accent carried traces of Eastern Europe filed smooth by years in America. I appreciate the opportunity. I arranged my palette, mixing flesh tones that would match the ruddy undertones of his complexion. Burnt sienna, yellow ochre, titanium white. The commission specified 6 sessions. Is there a particular style you're hoping for? Realistic. I want to see who I actually am. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Not some romanticized version. We worked in silence mostly. I asked him to turn his head 15 degrees left, to relax his shoulders, to think about something that made him genuinely happy so the tension would leave his jaw. He complied with the patience of someone accustomed to being studied. The smell of linseed oil and turpentine filled the gallery, familiar and grounding. Outside, November wind rattled the windows. Inside, I painted the truth of him. The intelligence in his eyes, the calculation. The way one corner of his mouth sat slightly higher than the other, suggesting chronic skepticism. By the 4th session, the portrait was taking shape. Strong. Honest. Maybe the best work I'd done in months. "You have a gift for seeing people," he said during our 5th session, breaking an hour of silence. "For finding what they hide." "I just paint what's there." "No." He shifted slightly, breaking the pose. His phone buzzed on the side table. The 14th time in an hour. You paint what's true underneath what people show. That's rarer. I adjusted burnt sienna on my palette, uncomfortable with the observation. I need you to hold still for another 20 minutes. The light's changing. The final session was scheduled for Friday at 6 p.m. He arrived 17 minutes late, which threw off my carefully planned lighting. The northern exposure was fading fast, forcing me to work quickly to capture the shadows I needed. But he seemed agitated, kept checking his phone, responding to messages with increasing frequency. We can reschedule if this isn't a good time, I offered.
No.
We finished today. Sharp. Dismissive. His cologne seemed stronger, almost acrid. I need this completed. I worked quickly, adding final details to the highlight on his cheekbone, the shadow beneath his chin where skin met collar. My brush moved in practice strokes, tiny touches that brought dimension to flat paint. At 7:43 p.m., I set down my brush and stepped back. It's done. He stood, circled the easel slowly, studied his own face rendered in oil on linen. For a long moment he said nothing, just stared at himself, jaw working like he was chewing words he wouldn't say. Then, you made me look dangerous. I made you look honest. Same thing, perhaps. He pulled an envelope from his jacket, set it on my work table. The paper was cream-colored, expensive. As agreed. $8,700. I should have taken the money and let him walk out. Should have recognized the tension radiating off him like heat from summer asphalt. Should have noticed the way his eyes kept darting to the window, watching the street. Instead, I asked, "Can I photograph it? For my portfolio?" No photographs. No records. That was the agreement.
Right.
Of course. He lifted the canvas carefully, holding it by the frame edges. Paint's still wet enough to smell. You've never asked who I am. I don't need to know. Smart girl. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. Outside, headlights swept across the gallery windows. A piece of advice. If anyone asks about this painting, about me, you've never seen me. You painted nothing. Understand? My stomach tightened. I understand. The door chimed as he left, taking the portrait and leaving behind an envelope full of cash and the creeping certainty that I'd just made a terrible mistake. I locked the door behind him, counted the money under the fluorescent work light. All there, mostly hundreds, sequential serial numbers. Clean bills that smelled like they'd come straight from a bank. I should have felt relief. Should have immediately transferred funds to cover my debts. Instead, I felt watched. The gallery suddenly seemed too exposed. Those northern windows I loved for their light now felt like vulnerabilities. The brick walls that gave the space character looked thin, breakable. I cleaned my brushes mechanically, watching turpentine run brown with burnt sienna, and tried to ignore the unease crawling up my spine. At 8:30 p.m., I locked up and walked 3 blocks to the subway station. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet for a Friday night. The Polish bakery had closed, lights off, the usual smell of cinnamon replaced by nothing. Anchor's End was strangely empty, its cluster of smokers absent from the entrance, where they usually gathered to complain about the Mets. I was half a block from the station when the black Mercedes pulled up alongside me. Tinted windows. Engine purring like something alive. The rear door opened, and a voice I'd never heard directly said, "Get in." Every self-preservation instinct I possess screamed to run. But something in that voice, cold, absolute, allowing no argument, made my body obey before my brain could override it. The same way you step back from a subway platform edge when a train approaches. Pure survival instinct recognizing apex predator. I slid into the leather interior. The door closed with a solid thunk that sounded like a vault ceiling. Alexei Volkov sat across from me in the spacious back seat, separated by enough distance to feel deliberate. He wore charcoal gray, no tie, his shirt open at the collar. Up close, he was more unsettling than I'd imagined. Not classically handsome, but compelling, all sharp angles and controlled power. His cologne was subtle, cedar and something darker. The car began moving before I could speak. You painted Dmitry Kaslov. Not a question. His pale eyes held mine unblinking. My mouth went dry. I don't know that name. The man who sat for you. 6 sessions. $8,700. His hands rested on his knees, completely still. Dmitry Kaslov. He works for the Odessa Group. Handles their money laundering through construction fronts in Queens. I just paint portraits. I don't ask questions. I know. He gestured, and I noticed the driver for the first time. Massive shoulders, neck like a tree trunk, eyes that watched the road with professional intensity. That's why he chose you. Young artist, struggling, no connections. Someone who'd take the money and stay quiet. Where are we going? Somewhere we can talk without interruption. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Am I in trouble? That depends. He reached into his coat and I flinched, but he only pulled out a phone. He tapped the screen with precise movements, then turned it toward me. The photograph showed my gallery. Not from the street, from inside. My work table, my easels, my paintings stacked against the wall. The northern windows I loved. And in the center of the frame, someone had spray-painted words across my largest canvas in violent red. Volkov's Horror Paints Dead Men. The canvas underneath was one I'd been working on for 6 months. My father, painted from memory, captured in the garden behind our house in Prospect Heights before the cancer had hollowed him out. Before the hospital beds and morphine drips, and his hand going cold in mine at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. 6 months of work. The only thing I'd created purely for myself in 3 years. Destroyed. When my voice came out strangled. 2 hours ago, while you were finishing Kaslov's portrait. Alexei pocketed the phone. My men secured the scene. You can't go back tonight. Who did this? Competitors. Rivals who want to send me a message by targeting anyone in my buildings. His jaw tightened fractionally, the only visible sign of anger. They chose you because you're visible. Because destroying an artist's work is psychological warfare. I pressed my palm against my chest, trying to steady my breathing. The leather seat was soft beneath me, the car moving smoothly through Brooklyn's streets I couldn't track. Everything felt surreal, like I'd stepped sideways into someone else's life. The painting I managed. My father. That was. I know what it was. He said it matter-of-factly, and something in his tone suggested he wasn't lying. I've seen your work. Every piece you've completed in 3 years. I own the building. I pay attention to who occupies my spaces. The car turned down a street I didn't recognize, descended into an underground garage lit by harsh fluorescent tubes. Concrete pillars. Security cameras in every corner. The door locks disengaged with a soft click. Alexei exited first, waited for me to follow. I stepped out on shaking legs, into air that smelled like gasoline and cold concrete. He gestured toward a steel door marked only with numbers, 4B. This way. I followed him through security doors that required key codes and palm prints, into an elevator lined with mirrors that reflected us back infinite times. Me in paint-stained jeans and a sweater with holes at the cuffs. Him in tailored perfection that probably cost more than I'd earned all year. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Brooklyn, Manhattan glittering across the East River like scattered diamonds. The space was minimalist, leather furniture in shades of gray and black, abstract art I recognized as expensive even if I couldn't name the artists, a kitchen that looked unused despite gleaming appliances. Sit. He gestured to a sofa that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. I sat because my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The leather was butter-soft, the kind of quality you felt in your bones. What happens now? Now you tell me everything about Kaslov. What he said, what he asked, anything unusual. Alexei moved to a bar cart, poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter. He offered me one. I took it, let the burn of expensive whiskey ground me. It tasted like smoke and oak, nothing like the cheap wine I bought for $7 at the corner store. He didn't say much. Just sat for the sessions. Used his phone a lot during the last one. Seemed nervous. Nervous how? Kept checking the window. Watching the street like he expected someone. I sipped again. Felt warmth spread through my chest. He told me if anyone asked, I'd never painted him. Said I should forget I'd ever seen him. Alexei's expression darkened. He's planning something. Using your building as a meeting point, probably. The portrait was cover. Cover for what? For establishing reason to be in my territory repeatedly without raising suspicion. He sipped his drink, eyes never leaving my face. Those pale gray eyes that saw everything, missed nothing. You were a prop. An unwitting one, but still. Anger flared hot in my chest, cutting through the fear. So this is my fault? Someone destroyed my work because I took a commission? This is my fault. His voice dropped to something cold and lethal. For not vetting every person who enters my buildings more carefully. For not protecting what's mine. I'm not yours. I'm a tenant who pays $1,400 a month for a space with crumbling brick and water damage. You're in my building. On my street. That makes you my responsibility. He set down his glass with controlled precision. And someone damaged you to get to me. That's unacceptable. The way he said it flat, absolute, sent chills down my spine. Not fear exactly. Something else I didn't want to examine. What are you going to do? Find who gave the order. Make sure they understand the consequences of touching anything connected to me. His pale eyes locked onto mine. But first, you're going to stay here tonight. It's not safe to go back to your apartment. I have a roommate.
Jade.
She'll worry. He pulled out his phone, handed it to me. Call her. Tell her you're staying with a friend. Don't mention names or locations. I did, hands still trembling as I dialed. Jade answered on the second ring, her voice bright with whatever comedy show she'd been binge-watching. Hey, you still at the gallery? No, I'm staying with a friend tonight. Last-minute thing. I kept my tone light, hated lying to her but recognized the necessity. I'll be back tomorrow. Ooh, mysterious friend. She laughed. Okay, babe. Text me if you need anything. I'll be here watching people make terrible decisions on reality TV. Thanks, Jade. After I hung up, Alexei showed me to a guest room. White linens that looked like clouds, soft carpeting that swallowed sound, a bathroom with a rainfall shower and towels thicker than my mattress at home. Everything pristine, untouched, like a hotel room waiting for its first guest. Anything you need. There's an intercom by the bed. Press 1. He paused in the doorway, something unreadable crossing his features. Why are you helping me? The question seemed to catch him off guard. His jaw worked for a moment then. Because you paint truth. Because someone destroyed something you loved to hurt me. Because... He stopped. Whatever he'd been about to say swallowed back. Get some rest. We'll handle this tomorrow. The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone in luxury I'd never touched before. Sleep didn't come. I lay in sheets that probably cost more than my monthly food budget, watching light from the city paint patterns on the ceiling. Car headlights. A plane blinking red across the sky. The faint glow of Manhattan across the river. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. My father's face obliterated by violent red spray paint. 6 months of work destroyed in minutes. The only record I had of him before the illness, before the pain had rewritten his features into something I barely recognized at the end. Around 2 a.m., I gave up. Pulled on the robe hanging in the bathroom, silk, heavy, smelling faintly of sandalwood, and padded barefoot into the main living space. Alexei sat by the windows, still dressed, a laptop open on the table before him. The screen cast blue light across his face, highlighting the sharp planes of his cheekbones. He looked up when I entered, no surprise in his expression. Like he'd been expecting me. Can't sleep, I said unnecessarily. Understandable. He closed the laptop. Hungry. I realized. Hadn't eaten since noon. My stomach had been in knots through the final session with Kasloff, through counting the money, through the surreal terror of being pulled into a stranger's car. Alexei moved to the kitchen, and I perched on a bar stool, watching him prepare food with surprising confidence. Bread that smelled fresh, cheese that looked imported, grapes and sliced apple arranged on a wooden board between us. His hands moved with the same precision he brought to everything else, controlled, deliberate, nothing wasted. We ate in silence for a while. The cheese was sharp on my tongue, the bread still warm somehow. Outside, the city glowed and shifted, never sleeping. Then I asked the question that had been building since he'd shown me the photograph. How long have you known about my work?
Since you moved in.
I review files on all new tenants. He cut an apple with a knife that looked too expensive to use on fruit. Yours was interesting. NYU dropout, art history. Father died 8 months before you signed the lease. $4,200 in student debt. No criminal record. References from 3 professors who all said the same thing, brilliant but struggling. Heat crept up my neck. You investigated me. I investigate everyone. Matter of fact, like discussing the weather. Your rent is $1,400 for a space worth $3,200 market value. You think that happened by accident. I set down the cheese I'd been holding.
Why?
Because I walked past your gallery 9 months ago. Saw you working on a painting of the Brooklyn Bridge at sunset. He met my eyes, and something in his expression shifted. Less guarded. You'd captured something I'd never seen anyone capture, the way light dies differently in winter. How it doesn't fade, so much as fracture. Like the day is breaking instead of ending. My breath caught. No one had ever described my work like that. No one had ever looked that closely. I wanted to see what else you'd create if you had space and time, he continued. So, I adjusted the rent. Kept it low enough you could afford it, high enough you wouldn't question the discount. And I watched you work through those windows for 9 months. I should have been angry. Should have felt manipulated, controlled, reduced to an experiment in artistic patronage. Instead, I felt seen in a way that terrified and thrilled me simultaneously. You've been, what? Subsidizing my rent, so I'd keep painting. I've been ensuring a talented artist doesn't get priced out of the neighborhood by developers who wouldn't know art from advertising. He pushed the board toward me.
Eat more.
You're too thin. You don't get to tell me what to do. Then consider it a strong suggestion. The corner of his mouth lifted, barely but there. The first hint of expression beyond controlled neutrality. From someone who has a vested interest in your well-being. I picked up a grape, let its sweetness burst on my tongue. The painting they destroyed. My father. I can't. My voice broke. Alexei stood, circled the counter with deliberate slowness. Each step measured. He stopped close enough that I could smell cedar and something darker, more expensive. Bergamot, maybe. His hand lifted, hesitated in the air between us like he was asking permission, then touched my face with unexpected gentleness. I know what it's like to lose the only record of someone you loved. Your father? My brother. Killed 14 years ago in Grozny during a territorial dispute that should never have escalated. His thumb traced my cheekbone, and I felt calluses I hadn't expected. I had one photograph. It burned in a fire that destroyed everything I owned when I first came to New York. That kind of loss doesn't heal. You just learn to carry it differently. I turned my face into his palm without deciding to, drawn by warmth and understanding I hadn't expected from a man everyone whispered about in careful tones. His other hand found my waist, steadying me as I stood from the bar stool. This is a bad idea, I whispered. Probably. His forehead touched mine, and I felt his breath against my lips. Whiskey and something wild underneath. Tell me to stop and I will. I should have told him to stop. Should have recognized the danger of wanting someone who lived in shadows, who investigated his tenants and arranged their rents like chess pieces. Someone who'd pulled me into his car with 2 words and expected obedience. Instead, I closed the distance between us and kissed him. If you're hooked on this dangerous connection, drop a like, because things are about to get even more intense. His mouth was warm against mine, tasting of whiskey and want. The kiss started careful, questioning, his lips moving against mine like he was learning me, testing boundaries neither of us had acknowledged existed. When I didn't pull away, when my hands came up to grip his shirt, fingers twisting in expensive fabric, it deepened. His hand slid from my waist to the small of my back, pulling me closer. The other cupped my face, thumb stroking my cheekbone with surprising tenderness. I tasted coffee underneath the whiskey, felt the barely contained strength in how he held me. Like I was something precious and dangerous at once. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes searched mine. Pale gray in the dim kitchen light, pupils blown wide. "I can't stop thinking about you," he said, voice rough. "Since that night.
Since I saw what they did.
Since I realized you've been here for 9 months and I'd been too blind to do anything but watch from a distance." My throat tightened. "Alexei, tell me you don't feel it. Tell me I'm imagining this and I'll walk away. Leave you alone." His hand was still on my face, warm and solid. "But tell me honestly. I should have lied. Should have protected both of us from whatever this was. This impossible attraction between a struggling artist and a man who commanded territory through violence I could only imagine. Instead, the truth came out in a whisper. I can't stop thinking about you either." Something fierce crossed his expression. Relief, maybe. Or hunger. He kissed me again, and this time there was nothing careful about it. His mouth claimed mine with intensity that made my knees weak, one hand tangling in my hair, the other pulling me flush against him. I felt the hard planes of his body through his shirt, the barely controlled strength, the heat of him seeping through the silk robe I wore. When his mouth left mine to trace my jaw, my neck, I gasped. His teeth grazed the sensitive spot below my ear, and I felt it everywhere, lightening down my spine, heat pooling low in my belly. "I'm not a good man, Lauren," he murmured against my skin. His voice was dark velvet, dangerous. "I'd do terrible things to maintain power and protect what's mine. You deserve better than what I can offer." Maybe I don't want better. My hands found his hair, tangled in the dark strands going silver at his temples. Maybe I want this. He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." I held his gaze, let him see the certainty there. "I'm choosing this."
Choosing you.
"Stop trying to protect me from my own decisions." His jaw clenched. Then he lifted me onto the counter in one smooth motion, stepped between my legs, and kissed me like he was trying to consume me. The marble was cold through the thin silk, contrasting with the heat of his body pressed against mine. His hands were careful on my waist, sliding up slowly, giving me time to stop him. When I didn't, when I arched into his touch instead, I heard his breath catch. "Stay with me tonight," he said against my mouth. "Not in the guest room. Not out of fear or obligation. Just stay." I nodded, unable to form words around the want constricting my throat. He helped me down from the counter, laced his fingers through mine, and led me through the penthouse to his bedroom. The space was darker than the guest room, curtains drawn against the city. He released my hand to light a single lamp, casting everything in warm amber. The bed dominated the room, king-sized, covered in dark linens that looked like they'd swallow me whole. Alexei turned to face me, and I saw vulnerability in his expression for the first time. Like he was waiting for me to change my mind, to realize what I was doing and run. Instead, I reached for the tie of the silk robe and let it fall open. His eyes tracked the movement darkening. Then his hands were on me again, sliding the robe off my shoulders, letting it pool at my feet. I stood before him in just the thin tank top and underwear I'd been sleeping in, feeling more exposed than I'd ever felt. "Beautiful," he said simply, and the way he said it, like stating fact rather than offering compliment, made heat flood my face. He undressed slowly, giving me time to change my mind. Shirt unbuttoned with careful fingers, revealing a chest mapped with scars I wanted to trace. Expensive belt unbuckled, dress pants folded and set aside with the same precision he brought to everything. When he stood before me in just boxer briefs, I saw all of him. the violence he'd survived written across his skin. A puckered line along his ribs, knife, I guessed. Something that looked like a burn on his shoulder blade. A bullet scar below his collarbone, white and raised. I reached out, traced the knife scar with my fingertips. Tell me. Grozny, 19 years old, didn't move fast enough. His hand covered mine, pressed it against his ribs. The man who did it didn't survive the night. This one. I touched the burn. Warehouse fire in Brighton Beach. 24. Lost everything I owned except what I was wearing. And this. The bullet scar, smooth under my palm. 28. Rival thought killing me would solve a territory dispute. His mouth curved without humor. He was wrong. It just made my response more creative. You've survived so much, I breathed. So have you. His hands found my waist, pulled me against him. Student debt, grief, struggling to create beauty in a world that doesn't value it. Different scars, same survival. He walked me backward until my legs hit the bed, then lowered me carefully onto sheets that felt like water. The lamp cast his face in shadow and light as he moved over me, positioning himself with careful attention to give me space to breathe, to think, to choose. Last chance, he said, voice rough. Tell me to stop. Don't stop. I pulled him down to me. Don't you dare stop. When his mouth found mine again, it was different.
Slower. Deeper.
Like he had all the time in the world to learn me. His hands mapped my body with reverence, sliding under my tank top to find bare skin, fingertips tracing my ribs, my waist, the curve of my hip. When he pulled the fabric over my head, I helped him. When his mouth found my neck, my collarbone lower, I arched into the sensation. His touch was careful but certain, patient but purposeful, building heat between us that had nothing to do with rough passion and everything to do with connection. I traced his scars in return, learning the violence that had shaped him. Each raised line a story whispered in the dark. A life lived in shadows and danger that somehow led him to subsidizing rent for an artist he'd watched through windows for 9 months. When he settled between my legs, the weight of him grounding and electrifying at once, I felt completely seen.
Known.
Like he'd been studying me all this time and now finally had permission to touch. You're sure? He asked one more time, and I loved him for asking. I'm sure. When he moved inside me, slowly, carefully, watching my face for any sign of discomfort, I felt something shift in my chest. Like a door I'd kept locked was finally opening. He moved with the same controlled precision he brought to everything, but underneath I felt something wild. Something that wanted to consume and claim, but held back out of care for me. We moved together, building a rhythm that felt ancient and new at once. His forehead pressed against mine, breathing synchronized, hands laced together above my head. Outside, the city sprawled indifferent to our collision. Inside, we created something that shouldn't exist but did anyway. When release finally came, it crashed through me in waves. I felt him follow moments later, his whole body tensing, my name on his lips like a prayer or a curse. Afterward, he rolled to the side, pulled me against him so my head rested on his chest. I listened to his heartbeat slow, felt his fingers trace lazy patterns on my shoulder blade. The sheets were soft beneath us, the room warm, the city glowing through a gap in the curtains. I meant what I said, Alexei murmured into my hair. I'll find who did this. Make sure they understand what it costs. I traced circles on his chest, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. That should terrify me, but it doesn't.
No.
I tilted my head back to meet his eyes. It makes me feel protected and dangerous at the same time. His hand tightened on my waist. Tomorrow, we handle this properly. But tonight, you're safe here. I promise you that. I believed him. Lying there in his arms, wrapped in expensive sheets with the weight of his protection settling over me like armor, I felt something I hadn't felt since before my father died. Safe. And maybe that should have terrified me more than anything else. I woke alone. The sheets beside me still held his warmth, the indentation of his body in expensive linens. Outside the windows, Dawn was breaking over Brooklyn, pale winter light turning the East River silver. I lay there for a moment, breathing in the scent of cedar that clung to the pillow, letting reality settle over me. I'd slept with Alexei Volkov. Not just slept with, chosen him deliberately, eyes open, knowing exactly what he was. A man who investigated his tenants and arranged their lives like chess pieces. Who commanded territory, through violence whispered about but never witnessed directly. Who'd watched me through gallery windows for 9 months before finally closing the distance between us. I should have felt regret.
Shame.
The smart kind of fear that makes you run. Instead, I felt safe. And that was more terrifying than anything else. I found him in the main living space, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Russian. He dressed in fresh clothes, black shirt, gray slacks, looking every inch the dangerous man everyone feared. His back was to me, shoulders tense, one hand gesturing sharply as he spoke. The tone of his voice made my skin prickle.
Cold.
Controlled. Lethal. He noticed me standing in the doorway, held up one finger, wait, and continued the conversation. I caught only a few words, my limited Russian failing me. But I didn't need translation to understand the weight of what he was discussing. When he finally ended the call, he turned to face me. His expression was carefully neutral, but something dark lived in his eyes. "Coffee?" he asked, gesturing to the kitchen where a pot was already brewing. What happened? He studied me for a moment, like he was deciding how much truth I could handle. Then, Kasloff is dead. Found in the East River 2 hours ago. Single gunshot to the back of the head. Professional. The air left my lungs. You didn't.
No.
He crossed to me, and the gentleness of his touch on my face contrasted sharply with the news he'd just delivered. The Odessa group discovered he was skimming money from their operations. They handled it internally, but his death creates problems. What kind of problems? The portrait you painted is now evidence of his movements in my territory during his final weeks. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Whoever he was working with now has it. A record of what he looked like, created by an artist in my building. They'll either destroy it or use it to implicate you as a witness to something. Fear spiked cold through my veins. I didn't witness anything. They don't know that. They only know you had extended contact with Kasloff before his death. He pulled me against him, solid and warm despite the coldness of the conversation. I won't let anything happen to you, but you need to trust me completely. No questions, no hesitation.
Can you do that?
I should have asked what that meant. Should have demanded details, refused to give blanket consent to whatever he was planning. Instead, I pressed my face against his chest and breathed in cedar and safety. Yes. His arms tightened around me. Good girl. 3 days passed in a strange sort of domesticity. Alexei's men secured my gallery, changed the locks, installed cameras in every corner and along the street. They scrubbed the spray paint from my father's portrait, carefully photographed the damage, then transported the canvas to a restoration specialist in Manhattan who charged $3,400 just to assess whether it could be saved. I stayed in the penthouse. Not because he forced me, he'd offered to arrange a hotel, to send me anywhere I wanted with protection. But because leaving felt wrong, like stepping out of a fortress into active gunfire. And because, impossibly, I wanted to stay. On the second morning, art supplies arrived. Not cheap student-grade materials, but professional quality. Windsor and Newton oils, sable brushes with perfect points, stretched Belgian linen canvases. Alexei set up an easel by the north-facing windows without asking, positioned it to catch the same diffused light I loved at the gallery. "Paint," he said simply. "You've been restless." He was right. My hands ached for the familiar weight of a brush, the meditative ritual of mixing colors. I pain. Ted while he worked, the two of us existing in comfortable silence broken only by the scratch of my palette knife and the soft click of his laptop keys. I caught him watching me sometimes. Would look up from mixing titanium white with ultramarine and find those pale gray eyes tracking my movements with focused intensity. Not sexual, though heat always simmered underneath. More like he was memorizing me. Learning the way I tilted my head when considering composition, how I bit my lip when a color wasn't quite right. "What are you painting?" he asked on the afternoon of the third day. I stepped back from the canvas, considered my work. The city. The way winter light fractures through buildings before sunset. He moved behind me, close enough that I felt his warmth against my back. His hand found my waist, thumb tracing small circles through my shirt. "You see beauty everywhere." "I see truth. Sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes it's brutal." I gestured to the canvas, where Red Hook's industrial architecture met dying light. "Sometimes it's both." His lips brushed my temple. "Like us." "Like us," I agreed. That night, he made dinner, pasta with a sauce that smelled like garlic and basil, and something rich I couldn't identify. We ate at the counter where he'd first kissed me, knees touching, sharing a bottle of wine that probably cost more than my monthly food budget. "Tell me about your roommate," he said, twirling pasta around his fork with precision.
Jade.
I recognized the careful tone. The way he made it sound casual when nothing about Alexei Volkov was ever casual. "Why?" "I'm learning your life. The parts one missed while keeping distance. She's my best friend from NYU. Stayed when I dropped out to take care of my father. Got me through the worst of the grief." I sipped wine, let it warm me. "She works at a nonprofit in Manhattan, saves every stray cat in Brooklyn, watches terrible reality TV, and makes fun of me for eating toast for dinner." "You eat toast for dinner?" "When money's tight, carbs are cheap." Something crossed his expression. Displeasure, maybe. Or determination. "Not anymore." "You don't get to." "I'm not controlling you." He set down his fork, turned to face me fully. "I'm stating fact. You work for me now, whether you paint in the gallery or here. That means you eat properly. That means you don't choose between rent and food. That means I handle things so you can create without drowning. I didn't agree to work for you. You're considering it. Not a question." His hand found my knee, thumb stroking the inside of my thigh through my jeans. "I need someone I trust to manage certain aspects of my business. Legitimate aspects. Gallery shows, art acquisitions, cultural investments that need someone with your eye and education." "You want to hire me as what?" "An art consultant. Personal assistant. Curator. Whatever title makes you comfortable." His eyes held mine. "Salary of $6,200 monthly. Health insurance. Retirement contributions. Normal business arrangement. $6,200. That was more than I'd made in my best 3 months combined. That's not a normal salary for a personal assistant. It's fair compensation for your expertise." He leaned closer and I smelled cedar and wine on his breath.
Say yes.
"I need to think about it." "Then think." His mouth found my neck, teeth grazing the spot that made me gasp. "But while you're thinking, know that I want you close. I want you protected. I want you creating beauty instead of surviving on toast and fear." I should have argued. Should have maintained boundaries between whatever this was and actual employment. Instead, I tilted my head to give him better access and let myself want what he was offering. On the morning of the fourth day, I was painting when the elevator chimed. I didn't look up immediately, assumed it was Constantine delivering something. Alexei's men came and went with quiet efficiency, bringing meals, packages, security updates delivered in low Russian. Then I heard her voice. "You must be the artist," she said, accent pure Moscow aristocracy. "The one my son has been hiding up here." I spun around, paintbrush clattering to the drop cloth. The woman standing by the elevator wore wealth like armor. Silver hair pulled into a perfect chignon. Diamond necklace at her throat that caught the northern light, at least 15 carats, set in platinum. Her suit was Chanel, her heels Louboutin, her expression carved from ice. And her face. I knew that face. I'd been staring at photographs of it for 3 weeks while preparing for the Kasloff commission. Studying bone structure, planning how to capture the cold intelligence in her eyes. "Your son," I managed. Alexei didn't mention me? She smiled, but it held no warmth. How typical.
I'm Katarina Volkova.
And you, my dear, have created quite a problem. Alexei appeared from his office, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw genuine emotion crack through his control. Fury, tightly leashed but visible in the set of his jaw, the tension in his shoulders. Mother, he said, voice tight. We agreed you'd call first. I was in the neighborhood. Katarina settled onto the sofa like she owned it, which, I realized with sinking dread, she probably did. I wanted to meet the girl who painted Dmitry Kaslov's final portrait. My blood turned to ice. How do you know about that? She pulled out her phone, showed me an email. The encrypted one. The one that had offered me $8,700 3 weeks ago. Because I commissioned it. The words landed like a physical blow. I needed to know if Dmitry was planning to betray our organization, she continued, voice matter of fact. Needed someone with no connections to paint him, observe him, report anything unusual. You were perfect, struggling artist, no ties to our world, desperate enough to take the money without asking questions. You used me. The words came out hollow. I paid you extremely well. Katarina stood, circled me slowly. Her perfume was expensive and cold, like winter roses. And you provided exactly what I needed, confirmation that Dmitry was nervous, distracted, using Alexei's territory for unauthorized meetings. You noted he checked his phone constantly during the final session. Watched the street. That information confirmed he was preparing to run. I looked at Alexei, saw his hands curl into fists at his sides. You knew about this?
No.
The single word was carved from stone. I didn't. Katarina laughed, sharp and bright. My son has gotten soft. Started caring about artists and buildings and legitimacy. Thinks he can transform what we are into something respectable. She turned to Alexei. But I still remember what this family is built on, darling. Power maintained through decisive action. You ordered the vandalism, Alexei said, voice deadly quiet. I ordered a message. Katarina examined her manicured nails. One that would demonstrate the cost of involvement with our enemies. The Odessa group needed to know we were watching Dmitry. Destroying the girl's painting accomplished that while simultaneously reminding you that sentiment is weakness our rivals will exploit. I thought of the photograph. My father's face obliterated by violent red spray paint. 6 months of work destroyed to make a point. You destroyed my father's portrait, I said, voice shaking with rage. To prove a point about power? I destroyed property. Nothing more. She dismissed it with a wave. Though I admit I underestimated Alexei's reaction. I didn't realize he developed actual feelings for you. That's unfortunate. Get out. Alexei's voice dropped to something I'd never heard before. Pure threat.
Now.
This is my organization. It was your organization. He crossed to stand beside me, his body a wall between us and his mother. Father left it to me 14 years ago. You're an advisor. Nothing more. And as of this moment, you're retired. Katarina's expression hardened. You can't. I can. I am. He pulled out his phone, pressed a single number. Constantine will escort you to your car. You're going to our estate in the Hamptons. You'll stay there. Comfortable, provided for, but away from operations. If you ever target her again, if you so much as speak her name, I'll freeze every account, revoke every access, and you'll spend your remaining years on whatever money you've hidden in Zurich. You destroy your own mother over a starving artist? Alexei stepped closer to her, and I saw why people feared him. His pale eyes were winter itself, his jaw set, every line of his body radiating controlled violence. I destroy anyone who hurts what's mine, he said softly. You taught me that, mother. Power through decisive action. I'm just applying the lesson. A massive man in a black suit appeared from the elevator. Constantine, who I'd seen coming and going but never heard speak. Ms. Volkova needs an escort to her vehicle, Alexei said without looking away from his mother. Then arranged transport to the Hamptons. She'll be staying there indefinitely. Katerina looked between us, calculation flickering across her features. Then she smoothed her expression back to cold neutrality. This isn't over. Yes, Alexei said. It is. I watched her leave, diamonds catching light as the elevator doors closed. The chime echoed in the sudden silence. Then Alexei turned to me, and something in his expression cracked. I'm sorry.
I didn't know she was involved.
Didn't know about any of it. Your mother commissioned the portrait. I was still processing, my mind replaying every interaction with Kasloff through this new lens. Orchestrated everything to test both him and you. And I was just a pawn. You were never just anything. He reached for me, and I let him pull me close despite the churning confusion. My mother is brilliant and ruthless and completely without sentiment. She sees people as assets or liabilities. Nothing in between. And which am I? You're the woman I'm falling in love with. He said it simply, like stating fact. The one I'd burn my organization to ash for before letting anyone hurt again. I pressed my face against his chest, breathing through the shock. She destroyed my father's painting to prove you'd gone soft. I know. She manipulated me from the beginning. Every moment with Kasloff was orchestrated. I know. And you just exiled your own mother for it. Without hesitation. He tilted my face up, forced me to meet his eyes. I'm giving you a choice she never gave you. Walk away. I'll ensure you're protected, that you can work without fear. Set you up somewhere she'll never find you. Give you enough money to pay off every debt and start fresh wherever you want. My throat tightened. Or stay. Build something with me that's not based on manipulation or tests or power plays. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Just two people who found each other in impossible circumstances and decided it was worth fighting for. I thought about the past 3 days. The easy silence while I painted. The way he made sure I ate, brought coffee exactly how I liked it without asking. How he'd watched me work with genuine appreciation, not calculation. How he'd chosen me over his own mother, without hesitation. I need conditions, I said finally. Relief flickered across his expression. Name them. I keep my gallery. My independence. My ability to take commissions without vetting them through your organization. I held his gaze. I won't become another asset you manage. Agreed. I want the job offer in writing. Contract that outlines exactly what I'm responsible for. Normal employment terms, not favors I can't refuse. Done. And if your mother comes near me again, if she so much as sends a message, I paint her portrait and sell it to your enemies. Let everyone know exactly what Katerina Volkova looks like. His laugh was startled, genuine. That's beautifully vindictive. I learned from the best. I touched his face, felt the tension in his jaw. I'm choosing this. Choosing you. But I'm choosing it on my terms, not because I'm trapped or manipulated or afraid. I wouldn't want it any other way. He kissed me then, deep and claiming. You're not mine to control. You're your own person who happens to be giving me a chance I don't deserve. You subsidized my rent for 9 months, so I could keep creating. You're protecting me from consequences of a commission your mother orchestrated. You just exiled family for me. I kissed him back. Maybe you deserve more credit than you think. Or maybe you see beauty where it doesn't exist. I see truth, remember? I pulled him toward the bedroom. And the truth is I want this. All of it. The danger, the complications, you. That night, he made love to me with desperate intensity. Like he was trying to prove something. To me, to himself, to the universe that had brought us together through manipulation and violence. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with the city glowing below, I felt the shift. This wasn't just attraction anymore. Wasn't just proximity and protection and dangerous chemistry. This was choice. Deliberate and eyes open and terrifying. This was falling. I learned what Alexei Volkov's decisive action looked like at dawn. I'd been sleeping in his bed, our bed now, somehow, when his phone buzzed at 4:47 a.m. He answered in Russian, voice low and controlled, then carefully extracted himself from the tangle of sheets and my arms. "Go back to sleep," he murmured, pressing a kiss to my temple. But I couldn't. I lay there listening to him move through the penthouse, making calls in that same controlled tone. Then I heard him in his office, door slightly ajar, speaking with icy precision. I shouldn't have eavesdropped. Should have stayed in bed and maintained plausible deniability about whatever he was planning. Instead, I crept to the office doorway. He sat at his desk, phone on speaker, talking to someone named Mikhail. The conversation was in English this time, for my benefit, maybe, though he didn't acknowledge my presence. 3 locations, Alexei said. The warehouse near the Brooklyn Navy Yard where they store contraband. The gambling operation in Sheepshead Bay. The restaurant on Brighton Beach Avenue they use for money laundering. I want them hit simultaneously. No one killed. I want this clean. But I want economic damage severe enough that rebuilding takes 6 months minimum. Understood. Mikhail's voice crackled through the speaker. Timeline. Before sunrise. I want the people who ordered vandalism on my property to wake up to news that everything they built is gone. Consider it done. After he hung up, Alexei finally looked at me. No surprise that I'd been listening. Just patient waiting for my reaction. You're going after them, I said. The people who destroyed my painting. I'm sending a message. Touch what's mine, lose everything you value. That's not equal exchange. My painting versus their entire operations. They didn't just destroy your painting. He stood, crossed to me with predatory grace. They violated you to hurt me. Used your art, something you created with love and grief, as a canvas for psychological warfare. That deserves consequences. I should have been horrified. Should have recognized the disproportionate violence and recoiled from it. Instead, I felt something darker. Satisfaction that someone was finally making them pay for what they'd taken from me. I should tell you to stop, I said. But you won't. He touched my face, thumb tracing my lower lip. Because you're furious it took this long. Because they destroyed something irreplaceable and walked away like it meant nothing. How many people will be hurt? No one. I gave explicit orders. Property damage only. The point isn't bloodshed. It's demonstrating that I protect what's mine with extreme prejudice. There it was again.
Mine.
The word should have grated, should have made me bristle at being claimed like territory. Instead, it settled over me like armor. When will it happen? 23 minutes. He checked his watch. Platinum Patek Philippe, probably worth more than my entire year's income. We'll see it on the news by dawn. I should have gone back to bed. Should have maintained distance from the violence he was orchestrating. Instead, I followed him to the living room where he made coffee, and we sat by the windows watching the sky lighten from black to navy to pale gray. At 5:34 a.m., his phone buzzed with confirmation. 3 messages in rapid succession, all in Russian. He read them with the same expression he brought to reviewing contracts, focused, analytical, satisfied. It's done? I asked. It's done. He pulled me against him, and I settled between his legs, my back to his chest, watching dawn break over Brooklyn. By the time the city wakes up, everyone will know what happens when someone touches what belongs to me. I felt his heartbeat against my spine, steady and controlled. Felt the danger radiating off him like heat. And I realized I wasn't afraid. I was awed. This was who he was. Not just the man who brought me coffee and watched me paint. Also this, the monster everyone feared, capable of dismantling operations with 3 phone calls before sunrise. Does it bother you? He asked quietly. Knowing what I'm capable of. It should. But it doesn't.
No.
I lace my fingers through his. It makes me feel protected in a world that's only ever made me feel vulnerable. His arms tightened around me. Then we're both broken in complementary ways. We watched the news together as the sun rose. 3 fires reported across Brooklyn: warehouse, restaurant, basement gambling operation. No casualties, but millions in damage. Authorities investigating possible organized crime connections. Equal exchange, Alexei murmured against my hair. They took something precious from you. I took everything they'd built. I should have felt guilty. Complicit. Morally compromised. Instead, I felt avenged. 6 weeks later. The gallery looked different now. Same exposed brick, same water-stained ceiling, same northern windows. But also different. Cameras in every corner, reinforced locks on the doors, security I'd stopped questioning because it meant I could work without fear. I stood before my easel, adding final touches to a painting I'd been working on for 2 weeks.
Not a portrait this time.
A landscape. Red Hook at sunset, industrial architecture meeting winter light as it fractured and died. And in the foreground, a figure standing by the water, face turned toward the Brooklyn Bridge. Alexei, captured in a moment of unguarded peace I'd witnessed from my window one evening. I heard his footsteps before I saw him. Familiar now, anticipated. The gallery door chimed at exactly 6 p.m., punctual as always. "You're early," I said without turning around. "You said 6. He crossed the space, and I felt his warmth against my back as he studied the painting over my shoulder. "Is that me? What do you think?" He was quiet for a long moment, taking in the way I'd rendered him. Strong but not harsh, dangerous but human. Standing in the city, he protected with violence I'd learned to accept. "You made me look human," he said finally. "I painted what's there." "Then you see something I don't." His hand found my waist, thumb tracing familiar circles. "Something worth painting, apparently." I set down my brush, turned in his arms. He looked good. Charcoal suit, no tie, dark hair perfect as always. But his eyes were what held me. Those pale gray eyes that had learned to soften when they looked at me. The Odessa group agreed to tour. "MS this morning," he said. "Kaslov's organization is divided, no longer a threat. My mother is settled in the Hamptons and under strict instructions not to contact anyone in Brooklyn. And you," he touched my face, "have no debt, no threats, nothing standing between you and creating whatever you want. You paid off my student loans. Early Christmas present." "It's January. Late Christmas present then." He smiled, and it transformed his face. Made him look younger, less burdened. "I told you I'd take care of what's mine." "I'm not yours," I said automatically, but without heat.
"No.
"You're your own person who happens to have chosen me." His forehead touched mine, which makes me the luckiest bastard in Brooklyn. I kissed him, tasting coffee and something wild underneath. The kiss deepened, his hands sliding at my back, pulling me closer. We'd gotten good at this, the give and take, the balance between his need to protect and my need for independence. When we finally broke apart, he gestured to the wall where my father's portrait hung. The restoration specialists had worked miracles. Not perfect, you could still see where the paint had been damaged if you looked closely.
But saved.
Visible. My father's face smiling out at me again, captured in the garden before the illness. "They did beautiful work," I said. "Not perfect,
but saved."
Alexei understood the symbolism, like both of us. On the easel beside my father's portrait sat the new painting. Alexei in the golden light, human and dangerous at once. Past and future, grief and hope, all existing in the same space. "Stay with me tonight," he said. Not out of fear or obligation. Not because of protection or employment. Just because you want to. I thought about the journey that had brought us here. A dangerous commission, a destroyed painting, a man who'd been watching me for 9 months before finally closing the distance. His mother's manipulation, his decisive choice, the way we'd negotiated terms until we found something that worked. We weren't perfect. Our foundation was blood and canvas and violence whispered about but carefully kept off page. But we were real. We were chosen. We were both damaged in ways that somehow fit together. "Always," I said. We locked up the gallery together as winter night fell over Red Hook. The street was quiet, the bakery closed, Anchor's End just beginning to fill with its usual crowd. Alexei's car waited at the curb, not the Mercedes this time, but a sleek Audi that drew less attention. As we drove through Brooklyn toward the penthouse, I watched the city slide past. The same streets where I'd struggled for 3 years, where I'd been violated and protected and claimed. Where I'd learned that sometimes the monster everyone fears is exactly what you need to feel safe. Regret anything? Alexei asked, glancing over at me. I thought about it honestly. The manipulation, the danger, the way my life had tilted sideways in a single evening. How I'd become entangled with a man who commanded empires and orchestrated violence with the same precision he brought to making me coffee. No, I said. I wouldn't change any of it. Even my mother using you? Even that. Because it led here. To this. I reached over, laced my fingers through his on the gear shift. To choosing you every day instead of having you forced on me. His hand tightened on mine. You're dangerously good for me. You're dangerously good for me, too. The penthouse welcomed us with familiar warmth, northern light fading through the windows, the easel he'd set up for me positioned exactly right, my paintings leaning against the wall in various stages of completion. Evidence that I existed here now, not as captive or obligation, but as partner. That night, we made love with the easy comfort of established intimacy. No desperate urgency, just slow exploration and quiet laughter, and the kind of connection that comes from choosing someone repeatedly. Afterward, wrapped in sheets that no longer felt foreign, I listened to his heartbeat and felt something I'd thought I'd lost when my father died. Home. I love you, Alexei murmured into my hair. I don't say that lightly, but I need you to know. I love you too. The words came easily, naturally. Even though you're complicated and dangerous, and you do terrible things to maintain power. Especially because of that? Maybe a little. His laugh rumbled through his chest beneath my ear. We're both going to hell. Probably. But at least we'll go together. Outside, the city glowed. Millions of lives unfolding in the dark, unaware of the collision that had happened in their midst. A struggling artist and a mafia boss finding each other through impossible circumstances. Violence leading to protection, leading to choice, leading to love. It shouldn't have worked. But lying there in his arms, paint still under my fingernails and his heartbeat steady against my cheek, I knew it did. We were broken in complementary ways. Damaged but saved. Not perfect, but real. And that was enough. Comment. I'm with you, Rosalie, if you stayed till the end. Where are you watching from? Drop your city below. I love knowing where my dark romance lovers are hiding. And if you need more dangerously beautiful love stories that'll ruin you for normal men, subscribe. Because next week's tale will destroy you in the best possible way. This is Rosalie's Dark Romance. Where love is dangerous, men are deadly, and happy endings are earned in blood and choice. Until next time, darlings, stay dangerously in love.